I stared at my phone screen for 3 full minutes before my brain could process what I was seeing. The WhatsApp notification glowed against the darkness of my bedroom at 2:47 a.m. It was from my mother, but it wasn't meant for me. The message was simple. Just 7 words. The money transfer went through. Delete everything. But it was sent to our family group chat. The one with me, my father, my younger sister Emma, and Mom herself. And below it, she'd accidentally attached a screenshot, a bank transfer for $89,000 to an account I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it was sent 4 hours ago, right around the time Dad said he was going to the pharmacy to pick up his heart medication. I didn't know it then, but that single misplaced message would unravel 23 years of my life, expose a truth so devastating that it would leave 3 people dead, destroy 2 marriages, and reveal that the woman I call Mom had been living a lie so elaborate that even she had started to believe it. My hands trembled as I took a screenshot before the message disappeared. Because I knew, somehow I just knew, she was going to delete it. And she did. 12 seconds later, the notification popped up. This message was deleted. But I already had the evidence. I should tell you who I was before that night. Before everything shattered. My name is Michael Patterson. And until that April morning, I thought I understood my family perfectly. I was 31 years old, working as a software engineer in Seattle, married to Caroline for 6 years, with a 4-year-old daughter named Sophie. My life was categorically normal. Beautifully, perfectly boring. My parents had been married for 34 years. Dad, Richard Patterson, was a gentleman who worked as an accountant for the same firm for 29 years before retiring. Mom, Patricia, was a part-time real estate agent and full-time neighborhood social coordinator. They lived in the same house in Portland where Emma and I grew up, a modest 3-bedroom craftsman with a Japanese maple in the front yard that Dad pruned every spring. We were the family other families envied. Sunday dinners every week. Group vacations to Cannon Beach every summer. A WhatsApp chat that pinged constantly with memes, photos of Sophie, and Mom's questions about whether we were eating enough vegetables. Emma, my sister, was 27 and lived in San Francisco, working in marketing for a tech startup. She was the rebel to my rule follower, the artist to my engineer, but we were close. We talked at least 3 times a week, sharing the comfortable shorthand of siblings who genuinely liked each other. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at that screenshot, trying to piece together an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a real estate transaction Mom had forgotten to tell us about. Maybe the message was meant for a client, and she'd mixed up her chats. Maybe the account was for a surprise, a family vacation fund, or money she was investing for our inheritance. But none of those explanations addressed the second part of the message: delete everything. At 6:15 a.m., I called Emma. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with sleep and panic. "You saw it too," she said. Not a question. "What the hell is going on?" I asked. "I don't know, but Mike," I checked. "That account number?" I ran it through a banking verification tool at work. "It's registered to someone named David Chun. That name mean anything to you?" It didn't. We spent 40 minutes on the phone, building theories, each more disturbing than the last. Finally, Emma said what we were both thinking. "We have to ask them. Today." I agreed to drive down to Portland that afternoon. Emma would fly up that evening. We'd confront them together at Sunday dinner, our regular weekly gathering that suddenly felt like a trap we'd been walking into for years. But I couldn't wait that long. At 9 a.m., I called my father's cell phone. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I called the house. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice bright and warm. "Michael, sweetheart, this is early for you. Everything okay?" I almost chickened out. Almost let her cheerful deflection work its magic. But I forced the words out. "Mom, I need to ask you about something. Last night, you sent a message to the family chat about a money transfer. Then you deleted it." The silence that followed lasted maybe 4 seconds, but it felt like drowning. When she spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Flat. Careful. "Michael, I don't know what you're talking about." "I have a screenshot, Mom." Another pause. Then, "We need to talk in person. Come to the house. 2 o'clock. Don't tell your father you're coming." She hung up. That's when I knew. Whatever this was, it was worse than I'd imagined. Because my mother, A woman who had never kept a secret in her life, who posted every meal and sunset on Facebook, had just asked me to lie to my father. The drive to Portland took 3 hours and felt like 3 years. I called Caroline and told her I had a family emergency. She heard the fear in my voice and didn't ask questions, just told me she loved me and to drive safely. I arrived at my childhood home at 1:47 p.m. Mom's car was in the driveway. Dad's wasn't. She opened the door before I could knock. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. Her face was bare of makeup, her hair pulled back severely, and her eyes looked haunted. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Running errands. We have about 90 minutes." She gestured me inside. We sat at the kitchen table where I'd eaten thousands of meals, done homework, played board games. The Japanese maple outside the window swayed in the April wind. "Who is David Chun?" I asked. Mom folded her hands on the table. They were shaking. "He's your brother." The words hung in the air like smoke. I actually laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's not funny. I'm not joking, Michael." She looked directly at me, and I saw she was telling the truth. "David Chun is my son. Your half-brother. He's 34 years old. And 3 months ago, he contacted me for the first time in his life." The kitchen tilted. I gripped the table edge. "Explain. Now." And she did. The story Mom told me that afternoon was like watching a stranger wear my mother's face. When she was 22, before she met my father, Patricia had been in a relationship with a Chinese-American man named James Chun. They were together for 2 years. She got pregnant. James wanted to get married and raise the baby together. Patricia panicked. She was young, scared, and came from a conservative Catholic family that would have disowned her for having a child out of wedlock with someone of another race. She told James she'd miscarried. Then she quietly arranged a private adoption through a church connection, the kind of closed adoption that was still common in the late 80s. She signed away her rights, never told her family, and tried to forget it ever happened. 6 months later, she met my father at a friend's wedding. She never told him about David. They got married, had me, then Emma. Built what looked like a perfect life on top of a buried secret. For 34 years, I thought I'd never see him again. Mom said, tears streaming down her face. I thought he was happy. I thought I'd made the right choice. What changed 3 months ago? I asked, my voice hollow. He found me. Through one of those DNA websites. Ancestry DNA. He submitted his sample looking for medical history information, and I popped up as his mother. He sent me a message through the website. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. And the money transfer. He's sick, Michael. He has advanced kidney disease. He needs a transplant, and his insurance won't cover all of it. He asked if I could help. He said he wasn't trying to ruin my life. He just needed help, and I was the only biological family he could find. $89,000. That's what his medical bills total. I've been sending him money for 3 months. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, and then this final lump sum. I took it from my real estate commissions, from savings I'd kept separate from your father. Does Dad know about any of this? She shook her head. He can't know. It would destroy him. Not just the secret, but Michael, your father, and I've been trying to keep something else from you and Emma. Here it comes, I thought. The second layer. Because of course there was more. Your father is dying. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? He has pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. We found out 6 months ago. The doctors gave him maybe a year, probably less. He didn't want to tell you kids yet. He wanted to do it when the time was right, when he was ready to say goodbye properly. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. My father was dying, and he'd been hiding it. My mother had a secret son, and she'd been hiding him. The foundation of my entire reality was crumbling beneath me. So you're dying inside, watching Dad die, and suddenly this stranger appears asking for money you don't have. I had some money, she said quietly, but not enough. So I did something I'm not proud of. What did you do, Mom? She stood up and walked to the kitchen drawer, pulling out a folder. She slid it across the table to me. Inside were documents, financial statements, and a life insurance policy on my father, the type that pays out immediately upon death. The policy is for $500,000, she said. I've had it for years. But 3 months ago, I increased the coverage to $1.2 million. Her voice broke. I've been crushing up his blood pressure medication and putting it in his evening tea. Just enough to make his heart work harder. Just enough to speed things along. I stood up so fast the chair crashed backward. You're killing him. He's already dying, she screamed, and I'd never heard my mother scream like that. He's in pain every single day. He's losing weight. He can barely walk upstairs, and he's pretending everything is fine because he doesn't want us to suffer. I'm giving him mercy, Michael. Mercy in a way to save my other son's life. You're murdering him for money. I'm ending his suffering and helping David. Don't you understand? I abandoned one child to build a life, and now that life is falling apart anyway. At least I can save one of my sons before everything ends. I grabbed my phone. I'm calling the police. And tell them what? Mom's voice had gone cold now, calculating. That you suspect your dying father is being given an extra dose of his own medication? That your mother, a woman with no criminal record, a beloved community member, might be helping her terminally ill husband pass peacefully? They'll find nothing. The autopsy will show cancer and heart failure. That's all. And that's when I realized my mother wasn't just desperate. She crossed a line somewhere in the past 3 months, and the woman standing before me was capable of anything. I need to leave, I said, backing toward the door. Michael, please. I need you to understand. Stay away from me. Stay away from Emma. I'm going to figure out how to stop this. I ran to my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Eventually, I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat there, shaking. I called Emma, told her everything. Her response, after a long silence, we need to talk to David. She was right. Within an hour, Emma had tracked him down through the DNA website and social media. David Chun lived in Sacramento, worked as a high school math teacher, and was married with 2 kids. Emma found his phone number through a teaching directory. At 7:34 p.m., I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hello. Is this David Chun? Yes, who's calling? My name is Michael Patterson. I'm Patricia Patterson's son. I think we need to talk. The line went quiet. Then, how much do you know? Everything. How much of it is true? I need a kidney transplant. That part is real. I found Patricia through DNA testing. That's real. I asked her for help. She sent money. He paused. But I never asked for $89,000, Michael. I asked for $5,000 to help cover testing and medications. She kept sending more. I kept telling her to stop, that it was too much, but she insisted. She said she had it to give, and she wanted to help. My blood ran cold. So you don't know where the rest of the money went. What rest of the money? I told him about the $89,000 transfer, about the deleted message, about what Mom had told me, all of it. When I finished, David was quiet for a long moment. Michael, I need to tell you something else. About 3 weeks ago, Patricia called me and asked if I'd be willing to meet your father. She said she was ready to tell him the truth, and she wanted us all to have a chance to know each other before his voice caught. Before he passed, I said yes. We planned to meet this coming Saturday. She told me Dad doesn't know anything. Then she lied to one of us. The 3rd layer peeled back, revealing something darker still. Either Mom was lying to me about Dad, or she was lying to David about her intentions. Or, and this was the thought that made my stomach churn, she was lying to both of us about something even worse. Over the next 4 days, Emma and I became detectives of our own family. We didn't tell Caroline or Emma's boyfriend the full story, just that we discovered some family financial issues we needed to sort out. We didn't want to accuse Mom of attempted murder without proof. But we also couldn't let Dad die if she was actually poisoning him. Emma flew up Thursday night. Friday morning, we told our parents we wanted to take them to dinner Saturday night. All of us together, a special family meal. Mom looked panicked. Dad looked delighted. Actually, Dad said with a smile, your mother and I were planning to have a family discussion on Saturday anyway. This is perfect. Mom shot him a look I couldn't read. Saturday arrived. Emma and I got to the house at 4 p.m. Dad answered the door, and I had to fight not to cry. He looked so much older than the last time I'd seen him, just 2 weeks ago. Thinner, grayer. But his eyes were bright, almost excited. Kids, come in. We have something to tell you both. We sat in the living room. Mom was pale, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap her knuckles were white. Dad reached over and took her hand. She flinched. "Your mother and I have been keeping something from you," Dad began. "And we're sorry. We thought we were protecting you, but we've realized that wasn't fair." Here it comes, I thought. He's going to tell us about the cancer. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. It's terminal. Emma gasped. I forced myself to look surprised. Dad continued, his voice steady. "I have maybe 6 months left, maybe less. We didn't tell you because I wanted to live as normally as possible for as long as I could. But there's something else. Something we should have told you 30 years ago." He looked at Mom. She was crying silently. "When your mother and I got married," Dad said, "she told me about a child she'd given up for adoption before we met. A son named David. I've known about him your entire lives." The room spun. Emma grabbed my hand. "I encouraged her to try to find him," Dad continued. "Life is short, and it's about to get shorter for me. I want to know my stepson before I died." And 3 months ago, Patricia found him. Layer 4. Dad knew. He'd always known. Which meant, "There's more," Dad said, and his voice had changed. Harder now. 2 weeks ago, I discovered something disturbing. "Patricia, do you want to tell them, or should I?" Mom's face had gone from pale to gray. "Richard, please. I found out my wife has been withdrawing large sums of money from our accounts. Nearly $200,000 over 3 months. I've also discovered that she increased my life insurance policy without discussing it with me." And his voice broke slightly. "I found crushed pills in the sugar bowl. The sugar bowl where she makes my evening tea." The silence was deafening. "I'm dying anyway," Dad said softly. "But I'd like to die on my own schedule if it's all the same." Mom stood abruptly. "This is insane. Richard, you're confused. The medication is making you paranoid. Sit down, Patricia." I'd never heard my father use that tone. Mom sat. Dad pulled out his phone and opened an app. A banking app. I've been tracking the transfers. The account receiving the money isn't David's. I called him myself on Tuesday. Had a lovely conversation with my stepson. Actually, he's a good man. Told me he'd received maybe $15,000 total from you, and he'd been trying to give some of it back because it was too much. "Then where's the rest of the money?" Emma whispered. Dad tapped his phone screen a few more times, then turned it to face us. "The money has been going to an LLC called Pacific Horizons Investments, which is registered to," he looked at Mom with something like pity, "Marcus Webb." The name hit the room like a bomb. Marcus Webb, Mom's old boyfriend from high school. The one she'd almost married before choosing college over marriage. The one who'd moved to Florida 15 years ago after his own divorce. "You've been having an affair," I said flatly. Mom's face crumpled. "It's not like that. Marcus and I reconnected on Facebook 2 years ago. We were just friends. But then Richard got sick, and I was so scared and lonely. And Marcus understood. How long have you been planning to kill me?" Dad asked, his voice eerily calm. "I'm not trying to kill you." "Then why the extra insurance? Why the crushed pills in my tea? Why the secret transfers?" "The insurance was in case we needed more money for treatment. The pills," she was sobbing now. "I was crushing them because you can't swallow pills anymore. Richard, you've been pretending you can, but I've seen you struggle. I was trying to help. Could it be true? Could we all be wrong? And Marcus?" I asked. "He's sick too," Mom said, her voice breaking. "He has early onset Alzheimer's. He's only 59, and he's already starting to forget things. He needed money for care, and his children won't help him. I was sending money to help an old friend. That's all. Just an old friend who needed help, like David needed help. I was trying to save everyone, and instead, I've lost everything." The doorbell rang. We all froze. Dad stood. "That'll be Detective Morrison. I called him this morning." "You called the police?" Mom's voice went shrill. "Richard, what did you tell them?" "The truth. Everything I know. I am dying, Patricia. I don't have time to figure out if you're lying to save face or if you're actually trying to murder me for insurance money. So I'm letting professionals sort it out." And this was layer 5. The moment when I realized my father had been conducting his own investigation, had been several steps ahead of all of us, and had decided that the truth, whatever it cost, was worth more than protecting the illusion of our perfect family. The next 6 hours were a nightmare of police interviews, financial audits, and the complete dismantling of my family. Detective Morrison was a patient man in his 50s who treated all of us with careful neutrality. He took our statements separately, collected Dad's evidence, and made phone calls that lasted into the night. By midnight, we had some answers. Not all of them, but enough. The truth was somehow both better and worse than any of us had imagined. Mom had been telling the truth about helping David, but she'd been lying about the amounts. She'd sent him $23,000 total, not the $5,000 David thought. He'd been depositing checks without looking at the amounts carefully, assuming they were small. The excess was discovered when his wife reviewed their bank statements and asked questions. She'd been lying about Marcus Webb, not about his Alzheimer's. That was real. But the affair was real too. They'd been planning to run away together after Dad died, using the life insurance money to fund Marcus's care and their new life in Florida. She'd been telling the truth about crushing Dad's pills. The sugar bowl contained crushed blood pressure medication, but it was the dosage Dad's doctor had prescribed. She'd been helping him take medicine he couldn't swallow, not poisoning him. But she'd been lying about something else entirely. The LLC, Pacific Horizons Investments, wasn't just a conduit to Marcus. It was a front for something much darker. The police traced the shell company's transactions and discovered that Mom had been working with Marcus to funnel money from Dad's retirement accounts. Marcus, in the early stages of Alzheimer's, had been convinced by Patricia that they were making investments for their future. In reality, she'd been systematically draining Dad's retirement savings, money that was supposed to pay for his end-of-life care, and hiding it in offshore accounts. The total amount, $347,000. She'd planned to let Dad die, believing he had enough money for hospice care and to leave something for his children. Instead, she'd stolen his dignity, his security, and his final months of peace. When confronted with the bank records, Mom's face went blank. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I was just trying to survive. After Richard dies, I have nothing. You kids have your own lives. David doesn't know me. Marcus was my only chance at not dying alone. So you stole Dad's death from him," Emma said, her voice like ice. "You made his last months about fear and paranoia instead of peace." "I never tried to kill him," Mom insisted, and I think she actually believed it. "I was just preparing for afterward." The detective asked if Dad wanted to press charges. Dad looked at Mom for a long time. Then he said, "No, I just want her out of the house. Tonight." And that was how it ended. Not with a dramatic arrest or a courtroom revelation, but with my mother packing a suitcase at 2 a.m. while her dying husband watched from the doorway of their bedroom and her children stood in the hallway like strangers. She left, moved in with Marcus in Florida. Emma and I stayed in Portland to help Dad arrange hospice care, using what money remained. David drove up from Sacramento 3 days later. We met him and his family at a quiet restaurant. It was surreal, shaking hands with a brother I'd never known, watching my nieces and nephew play with Sophie while Dad told stories about his life and asked David about his. David turned out to be funny, kind, and remarkably unbitter about the circumstances of his adoption. He'd had good parents, he said, a good life. Finding us was supposed to be a gift, not a tragedy. "I'm sorry," David told Dad that day. "I'm sorry that me reaching out started all this." "You didn't start anything," Dad replied. "You just revealed what was already there." Dad died 7 weeks later. It was peaceful. Emma and I were there, holding his hands. Caroline brought Sophie to say goodbye the day before he passed. David came twice more, bringing his wife and kids. Mom didn't come to the funeral. She sent flowers with a card that said simply, "I'm sorry. I loved him. I just loved myself more." In the weeks after, Emma and I had to piece together the logistics of betrayal. Dad had changed his will 3 weeks before he died, leaving everything to a trust for Emma, me, David, and Sophie. The remaining life insurance went to David's transplant fund, Dad's final act of generosity to the son he barely knew. Mom and Marcus's relationship imploded within 6 months. His Alzheimer's progressed faster than expected, and Patricia, without access to the money she'd stolen, which was seized and returned to Dad's estate, couldn't afford his care. His children moved him to a facility near them. Last I heard, Mom was living alone in a studio apartment, working retail to pay rent. She sends text messages sometimes. Long, rambling apologies that don't quite apologize. Explanations that don't quite explain. I don't respond. Neither does Emma. David got his transplant. His brother-in-law turned out to be a match. He's doing well now, back to teaching, coaching his kids' soccer teams. We text regularly. Had Thanksgiving together last year. His family, mine, Emma's. It was strange but good. A new family built on top of the rubble of the old one. I think about that WhatsApp message sometimes. That single mistake that unraveled everything. The money transfer went through. Delete everything. 7 words that exposed 34 years of secrets. Revealed my mother as someone I didn't recognize, and somehow gave me a brother I didn't know I needed. People ask if I miss my mom. The truth is, I don't know who I'd be missing. The woman who made me chocolate chip pancakes every Saturday? The one who organized neighborhood barbecues and sent care packages when I moved away? Or the woman who stole from her dying husband and planned to abandon her children for a fantasy life with a man who was losing his mind? I think they might have been the same person all along. Just different facets catching different light. Emma and I talk about it sometimes, late at night when the kids are asleep. About how someone could love us genuinely while also being capable of such spectacular betrayal. About whether Mom convinced herself her actions were justified, or if she knew all along that she was capable of cruelty and just didn't care. We never reach a conclusion. Maybe there isn't one. What I learned is this: technology didn't betray our family. Mom did. The WhatsApp message was just the messenger, delivering a truth that was already there, festering under the surface of Sunday dinners and family photos and I love you texts. The digital world doesn't create betrayal. It just makes it harder to hide. And sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. The hiding needed to end. The truth needed light, no matter how ugly it was. I have my father's final words written on a piece of paper in my wallet. He said them the night before he died, when it was just the two of us, and I asked him if he regretted marrying Mom knowing what he knew now. He smiled, this tiny, sad smile, and said, "I regret that she never trusted that the truth would have been enough, that she never believed we could have survived it together. But I don't regret you or Emma or the life we had before the lies took over. Those parts were real, Michael. Hold on to those." So I do. I hold on to the real parts. The Saturday pancakes and the family vacations and the dad who loved us enough to protect us even from our own mother. And I hold on to the new parts too. The brother I gained from chaos. The understanding that family isn't just blood and history. It's also choice and presence and showing up even when things fall apart. Sophie is 9 now. She asks about her grandmother sometimes. I tell her the truth, age appropriately, that grandma made some mistakes and hurt people, and sometimes when people hurt us, we need space to heal. Do you still love her? Sophie asked me once. I thought about it for a long time. I love who she was before I knew what she'd done. I don't know if that counts. I think it counts, Sophie said, and wrapped her arms around my neck. Maybe she's right. Maybe love doesn't have to make sense to be real, but neither does betrayal. And in our family, we learn they can exist in the same space, sent from the same person, delivered through the same device that also brings us photos of our kids and reminders to buy milk and messages that say, "I love you," from people who actually mean it. The Japanese maple outside my parents' old house still blooms every spring. Emma bought the house after Dad died. Couldn't stand to see strangers living there. She trimmed the tree last April, following the pattern Dad taught us years ago. Some things survive the devastation. Some things stay rooted, even when the ground shifts beneath them. And some secrets, once revealed, can never be hidden again, no matter how many times you hit delete. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story. With love and respect.